All right, so we're going to get started. I have an empty folder called Dev Connector opened up in VS Code. I have my integrated terminal open, and the very first thing I'm going to do here is create a new file called .gitignore. And I just want to add in here node_modules/ because I don't want the node modules folder, the dependencies, to get added to the repository. So we're going to go ahead and add that and save. And then I'm going to just initialize a Git repository with git init. Of course, you have to have Git installed to do this. So now we have a repository. All right. Now I'm not going to make all my commits on camera on the course, but I will do one at the end of this video just to show you. I mean, I know most of you guys know how to do it, but just in case you don't. All right. So we need to start building our Express server and our API. So let's go ahead and initialize a package.json. So we'll say npm init, and I'm just going to go through this real quick. So package name, that's good. Description, we'll say social network for developers. And entry point is going to be server.js, and go through that. Author, you guys can put your own name here if you want. And license, I'm going to do MIT. All right, so that will create our package.json with those values. Next thing I'm going to do is install our dependencies. Now there's quite a few dependencies, and I want to just install them all just to get it out of the way so that we have them installed for later and we don't have to worry about it. So let's do an npm install, or I. And of course we need Express, which is our main web framework for the back end. We're going to use something called Express Validator for data validation. So when we make a post request to our API, if there's fields that need to be there that aren't, it'll raise an error. So we'll use that for validation. Also, we need bcrypt. We're going to use bcrypt.js, which is used for password encryption. You never want to store plain text passwords in your database. We're going to use a package called config for global variables. We're going to use gravatar for profile avatars. How that works is if a user signs up, they can use an email that's associated with a gravatar account, and it will automatically show their profile image. Okay, we need JSON Web Token because we're using JWT to pass along a token for validation. So we'll be doing that stuff much later, but I want to get this stuff installed now. We're also using Mongoose, which is a layer that sits on top of the database so we can interact with it. We need request, which is just a small module that will allow us to make HTTP requests to another API. And the reason we're installing this is for GitHub repositories. We want our profiles to be able to have GitHub repositories listed on them. So we're going to make that request from our backend so that we can hide our API key and stuff like that. And we can just return the repositories. And then I think, yeah, that should be it for the regular dependencies. So we'll go ahead and install all of those. All right, so that should do it for regular dependencies. Now we're going to install a couple dev dependencies. So we want to do npm install -D, and we need nodemon, which will constantly watch our server so that we don't have to refresh it every time we make a change. And then we also want concurrently, which is going to allow us to run our backend Express server and our front-end React dev server at the same time with one single command. Okay, but that's much later. And you can see that those were added as dev dependencies. All right, so that stuff should be all set. So I'm going to clear this up. Now we need to have our main entry file. So we're going to create a file called server.js. And let's go ahead and bring in Express, because all I want to do right now is just get a very simple Express server up and running. So we'll bring that in, and let's go ahead and initialize our app variable with Express. Okay, and then we need to take that app variable and we want to listen on a port. So I'm actually going to put the port in a variable here. And we want to set this to process.env.port like that, because what this will do is it'll look for an environment variable called port to use, and when we deploy to Heroku, that's where it's going to get the port number. Now locally, I want to run it on port 5000. So basically, if there's no environment variable set, it will just go default to 5000. That's what this is doing. And then in the listen, we want to just pass in the port, and then we can do a callback. So if we want something to happen once it connects, I just want to do a console log. Oops. And let's just console log some backticks. So we'll put a template literal in here, and we'll just say server started on port, and then we can put in $, curly braces, and then the port variable. All right, and I'm just going to create a single endpoint just to test out. So we'll say app.get. So we'll take a get request to / and put in our callback with request response. And all I want to do is just do a res.send, which will just send data to the browser. And I'm just going to say API running. All right, so we'll go ahead and save that. Now we could go ahead and run this with node server or server.js, but I want to create a couple scripts, a couple npm scripts. So in package.json, I'm going to replace this test with start, and the start script is just going to run node server. That's actually the script that Heroku will run when we deploy. However, for development, I'm going to create a script called server that uses nodemon. That way we don't have to keep refreshing the server. So we'll run nodemon and then the name of the file, which is server. And later on, we're going to have a client script that will run React. We'll also have a dev script that'll run both at the same time using that concurrently package that I installed. All right, so that should be good for now. Let's save and let's try it out. So we'll do npm run server, which will run nodemon, and it will watch our server on port 5000. And then we're going to go into Postman, because this is where we're going to make all our requests. You could use the browser as well, since it's just a GET request, but we're going to do HTTP localhost, and we want port 5000. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and send, and we get API running. So we know that our Express server is up and running. All right, now the last thing I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to stop the server, and I'm just going to make a quick commit. So I'll say git add dot, so I'll add all files, and then I'll do a git commit -m, and then we just want to put a comment in here, and I'll just say initial commit like that. All right, so that will add it to our local repository. And I'm not going to keep doing that throughout the course. I would suggest you do it at your own pace whenever you want to make commits. But if you haven't used Git before, that's how you do it. And then at the end, we're going to push it to Heroku. All right, so now that we have that done, in the next video, I want to start to work on connecting our database. Okay, we want to connect to the MongoDB database that we created through MongoDB Atlas. All right, so we'll start that in the next video.